Another issue, I guess, in the last couple of years has been the FTC scrutinizing some deals. I'm curious from the legal side what you think is going to happen now. Will that get better, worse? Is the new administration going to change that?
So, as we came into the Trump presidency and everybody was expecting, pro-business, pro-energy, deregulation, all that stuff, the things that you guys were all thinking about, like this is going to be a great year. The one area that my colleagues and I all gave people caution on is, the FTC under Biden was very, scrutinized deals hard and probably did so almost as a deterrent for transactions. All of the major energy deals, I sold Crown Rock to Oxy, Exxon bought Pioneer. I think you did that deal.
Mm-hmm.
All those deals got second requests and had to go through a longer process than they really should have. And part of that was just a philosophy of the Biden administration under Lena Khan, who was the former head of the FTC, that consolidation is bad as a general matter, and we want to, discourage this. In some ways, you can do that by dragging things out. What we've been cautioning people is the change over to Trump. So now you have Andrew Ferguson at the FTC, and you have Gail Slater at the Department of Justice. They're, depending on the industry, you'll be in either of those camps. Andrew is more free market. That's probably good for the energy industry. I think energy deals, we're not going to have that problem. I don't think under Andrew, unless it's a basin consolidation that is way above the 30% typical threshold. I don't think there's going to be problems for energy deals getting done. But Gail Slater, she's part of a group, and frankly, JD Vance is part of this, that really still thinks that we should be scrutinizing these deals, and particularly, as you might guess, tech companies. So I think as a whole, there's not going to be this open floodgate and every deal is getting through that, like the opposite of what happened with Biden. So I think people just have to have a little bit of caution. You're going to have to look at each deal through whatever industry you're in and frankly, who's scrutinizing it.
Yeah, I'll just give a couple of comments from a investment banker standpoint. And this is maybe energy is interesting because energy did have a huge amount of scrutiny. And maybe just to touch on it, because I know a lot of you all may be associated with the energy industry. And what Stephen said, I'll just talk about it, is that a lot of it gets into concentration, and it's a commodity, and how much do you control the commodity? And so if there's over 30% concentration, as Stephen said, the general rule of thumb is that means it's an oligopoly, and that's too much control for one company, and then that's when deals don't get approved. And that's 30. And so the real question is, it's 30% of what? And what is the denominator? Is that 30% of your revenues come from a particular basin, like the Permian Basin? Or do you control 30% of the revenues of oil in the U.S. or 30% of the world? And I think many of you all know, but, if you took, for example, we talked about the Pioneer Exxon merger. Well, they were, I think, around 15% of the Permian Basin, 6% of the U.S., and less than 1% of the world. So the question is, but in the Midland Basin, then they start to get, I think it was around, this is all off my head, around 22%. So the question is, what's the denominator? And the FTC, over the last 2 years, it had a lot of questions, and they were trying to shrink that denominator a lot. So there was a lot of questions about would deals get done. I think the view has been is that the Trump administration will look at that denominator being much more global, and that there's really no U.S. company, even Exxon itself, that really can control the price of oil and natural gas. We certainly believe that as an institution. But that being said, it's interesting because frankly, it hasn't been tested. We really haven't seen, under the Trump administration, any large energy mergers. And you do hear some of the rhetoric from JD Vance, and Stephen is talking about, it's been mostly towards the tech sector, but you still don't know really how it's going to be tested and what's going to be their view on antitrust matters in the energy industry. That being said, I think the general feel is it'll be much more relaxed. And so, and we can kind of get into what's going on in 25 versus 24. Getting back to my earlier statistics, as we turn the corner of the year in and we're enjoying our New Year's Day and so on and so forth, there was a great expectation that M&A would be much stronger in 25 than 24 because of this issue, because they thought there would be less regulatory oversight of transactions, more comfort on mergers. And of course, and just as I pointed out in the statistics, it really hasn't happened at all. We can get into why and so on and so forth if you want.